In the mid-'80s, they upzoned Rainier Valley to spur development, and zero happened because everybody thought it was a gold mine. So they wanted the max, and no one was going to develop to the max. So in many cases, it actually hurts development to upzone. Dylan made the statement that he thinks we should all live in high-rise towers and everybody should live in Seattle to preserve the hinterlands.
I don't really think I made the statement that everyone, I'm going to correct you because we're on camera. I never made the statement. I think that cities benefit from having greater density.
Yeah.
Whether that's
and
residential
let's leave it at
or
that.
commercial.
Let's
So
leave it at
let's be
that.
very particular with what my
Because
comments were.
more and more I go to
Do you agree
meetings.
those were my comments?
I think Greg would even agree that that's a good objective. But
Yeah, okay, thank you.
But the notion that everybody has to live in Seattle, I disagree with.
I never
And the
said
notion
everyone
that
should live in
I hear more and more, that more is the answer. More. We just do more. Higher, bigger, more. That's going to make everything great. It does absolutely nothing to preserve lowland forests and farms that you want to preserve. There's no connection there at all. So the notion that if we all live in Seattle, we'll preserve the outer areas,
So what's
that's
the
just
purpose of the
BS.
Growth Management Act and having Pulte homes built
There are plenty of
80,000
homes.
It
houses?
drives up housing costs.
Yeah, growth boundaries are what's going to stop the sprawl, right? So I think what you're suggesting, and I think what we see is most of the development in the four-county Puget Sound region is happening outside of Seattle.
Yeah.
Right?
And
the
in
question-
low density.
No, actually, that's not true. It's flipped. We're growing more in the city than outside for the first time in 50 years.
Well, through the recession, okay,
Outside
fine,
King
but
County
let's
or
not
greater.
plan our city for a recession. Okay, let's plan it for the future.
Okay.
What was the question?
Yeah.
Well, I'm just trying to point out, there is no connection between building more in Seattle and that somehow the hinterlands are going to be preserved. Look at Snoqualmie Ridge, it's just not happening.
I'd sure like to know the upzone, the suburban strip mall that was built, and or that was not built because we added another high rise. If someone can point one out to me, I'd sure like to see it.
You know, I'm going to jump into it for a second.
Sure, come on, Mike.
I'm not going to be able to point that out, but you know, Amazon is hiring a ton of people, and we can argue whether we should allow Amazon to exist in Seattle or not. And you know, that's a policy discussion for another day. But those people need to live somewhere, and they can live near where they work, where they can walk or bike or take a short transit trip to get to work, or they can live in Snoqualmie Ridge, where we're all going to pay billions of dollars to quadruple the size of I-90 and 520. And so those people are going to live somewhere. And I'm not going to be able to point to a development that says a strip mall wasn't getting built, but to the extent that people are coming to the region, that we can give them live closer to where they work, that means less forest land or rural land that gets redeveloped, less pressure on that, and it also means less of our costs go into massive transportation infrastructure.
Wish that was true,
Mike,
Mike.
Amazon added 30,000 jobs in the last 2 years, okay? And most of those jobs were we imported the people to do that, not people who are
Yes.
living here. What is that kind of
Yes.
explosive economic growth? Obviously, that has huge impacts on the housing.
Bill, a better example is
That's
you
what's
gave
driving the
you
housing
gave a
costs.
tax rebate to Russell Development so they could make more people rich, which increases the pressure for housing in Seattle and makes the rents go up.
I wanted to.
So I guess I'm wondering, is there a policy here that should be applied, for example, when all this commercial development goes in and they produce all this additional worker space, workers, right? If we don't have the housing stock, should we be charging fees
Yes.
on that end?
And the incentive zoning program in commercial buildings is in part designed to do that. We can argue whether that's doing enough or not, for sure. And we can argue whether growth is good. I mean, I'm not going to stipulate, I mean, GDP is a bad measure of success. for
I'm an
us.
architect. I think growth can make things great, but not the way the zoning is now. It's making it worse.
And in response to this, to some degree, the proof is in the pudding. And by that I mean, I've taken a look closely at this very issue, and since 2000 through we've accelerated our rate of growth. We're exceeding our growth targets percentually since that we came out of the economic boom. We're just growing at record rates. Well, if you look at commuter patterns, the journey to work data, according to census data in 2000, it's on city record, 49% of those people who worked in Seattle actually lived in Seattle. The other 51% lived outside Seattle. Well now, and this was in the Gardner report in South Lake Union, for the South Lake Union plan, only 37% of those who work downtown actually live in Seattle. The percentage of people getting those jobs, an increasing percentage, are choosing to live in the suburbs. The Downtown Seattle Association did a commuter survey of 40, they interviewed like several thousand downtown workers. 80% of them said they lived, they get over 5 miles from their place of work. That's outside the city limits. They also highlighted that 20,000 of the 80,000 or 60,000 units that have been built in downtown around the core, 20,000 are occupied by downtown workers. That's 1 in 10. There's 220,000 jobs by their numbers. We went up by 20,000 since 2010. Only 1 in 10 live in and around downtown. There's a better solution to cramming, to address sprawl, to curb global warming, and get people out of their cars, and that's moving more of those jobs out to those other activity centers and encouraging reasonable densities out there close to where those people work, instead of trying to pour everything into Seattle and then building expensive transportation systems, trying to move people farther and farther out from where they're choosing to live. That causes sprawl. That increases global warming. That is, and not to mention crushing the livability of our city and the affordability of our city.
We'll talk about that when we have our comprehensive plan